So I am so thrilled and grateful to be here with the founder of Northstar Bison. Oh, I'm gonna start crying. Who's had such a huge impact on my life. You have.
Oh, thanks, Laura.
Over 10 years ago, she was such a guide when I was learning about nutrient-dense food. And so one of the main things I wanted you to hear from her is she has the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. And I have saved my money every single year to invest in that for my health, which has created so much health and happiness. So I wanted you to hear it from her mouth about that most nutrient-dense food on the planet.
Wow, Laura, as you can tell, this is an emotional privilege to be involved in, and so Laura brings up the fact that we have nutrient-dense food, and that is what nature produces. When you can study and understand how nature produces food for us, and to embrace that and to support that plan is the result of nutrient-dense food. I can take no credit for the incredible biology that is under that soil layer, and what then transfers into the plants that grow from it, on it, I should say. And then, of course, the harvesting of the grasses and the forbs and just the foraging landscape that is available for grazing animals, and just the whole life cycle of that is just such a miracle. And so with that, we get to have the wonderful discovery of eating this product, and when it goes into a lab and is tested, for what is really in it, we learn that it is so nutrient dense. It has the perfect fatty acid profile that is recognized as the ideal ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. It's like, oh, you mean just in nature? We didn't have to push any buttons. We didn't have to supplement it. We didn't do anything to coerce it. It just turned out to be omega-6s of about 4 to 1 of omega-3s, that perfect ratio. That's one example. And mineral rich. So bison happen to be the animals that we chose to graze, and they are, they're the native animal of the plains. They're referred to as the camel of the plains because they have this good healthy fat ratio. They're also referred to as the general store for the people who lived back in the days when these animals grazed freely. And they produce this nutrient-dense meat. Because of that nutrient-dense meat, you don't really need to eat as much of it. You feel satisfied, or you're satiated sooner. So it is a wonderful product that we've discovered and have the privilege to produce and share with you, as well as many of your friends and our friends.
I remember asking you a long time ago about your soil. Mm-hmm. And you said, well, we've tested it 20 feet deep. And do you want to say about that?
Yeah. What Laura's just bringing up right now is that actually right behind where we're standing, I don't know if it can be seen, but it happens to have a well head that we had to dig a new septic system here. And the story that I shared with you was what we discovered when we had to build a new drain field for this well that we had to put in. And the person that was digging, he stopped in the middle of the excavating and just said, I just can't believe what I'm seeing right now. I literally am seeing roots from plants that are at least 12 to 15 feet deep. He has never seen a root system that mature and that deep. So, you know, when you think about what that all means, is that when you allow landscapes, grasslands, to not be disturbed and plowed and tilled, these root systems just keep growing deeper and deeper. And when there is a drought, those root systems are going to keep going down deeper for water. So when we have a dry spell, we don't see it on the surface. There's a layer of I would say like a network, a communication network that is just below the surface of the soil that is called a mycorrhizal fungi. And that is a communication network of, we can't hear it, but this communicates from one part of the pasture to another part as to where there might need to have some nutrient redistribution happen. And literally, by having a mycorrhizal fungi network that was not disrupted by tilling and breaking it up every season, you're able to improve and redistribute nutrients to where it's needed. When you have different soil types and different mineral imbalances, it will correct it on its own. It's just magnificent. If I was to go and go to school and focus on something different than nutrition, it would be soil health.
Yes.
That is really, our health is subject and directly connected to the soil health through the animals and through the plants that we eat off of it.
So then what, can you talk about then the native grasses? Like what, is that just because you're at a pinnacle of your evolution as a company that you decided to do that, or what?
No, actually it was something that was kind of, we didn't realize what would happen. We took some advice from a fellow that my husband talked to from Indiana that was was a dairy farmer that had converted into bison, and that was the one person that we could identify as being a grass-fed grass-fed bison producer back in the mid-90s. And his advice was, because we told him what we were working with, and this farm was a dairy farm, and the half of the farm over there was all corn and beans. It was tilled and planted just like what's across the way over there. And he said the first bit of advice I would give you is to not plow, not do anything to the soil, just put your fences up. And then it's going to look like there's really not much out there to eat, but there's going to be some natural grasses and weeds, plants that we call weeds, but those are nutrient dense foods for the animals. And they will start to work the soil and stimulate and fertilize the soil. And there is a very rich seed bed of grasses in the ground that are constantly being suppressed by tilling and disking and cultivating and spraying, that they never have a chance to take hold. So we did that. We took his advice, and we have never, ever plowed or tilled anything since 1997 that we moved here.
Wow.
So these grasses and pastures are about 24 years mature. And the only inputs that we have is some seeds that have fallen out of the hay bales that we have harvested of, mature grass. And there is some grass seed in some of that, and that has also enhanced the population of the seeds and the, I should say, of the grass and the plants in the pasture.
Speaking with you several years ago, learning that the term grass-fed, if grass-fed is on the package, that does not mean grass-fed.
It can mean grass-fed, however, it doesn't represent 100% grass-fed anymore. It used to. Between 2008 and about 2016 or 17, I believe, is when the real definition of grass-fed and the legal rights to have that tag on your label, that definition on your label, loosened. So now it can be anything above 50%. So unfortunately, it puts the onus on the consumer to do their homework again, to get to know about the true standards and protocol of the producer. So because of that, we have taken that into our own hands to make sure that we capture the affidavits and documentation to provide that level of integrity and trustworthiness on the part of our consumers, that this is what we are confirming and verifying and signing on the dotted line as to how we raise our product and our animals, because they are 100% grass-fed. We do have to cut and bale some hay for the winter because of where we live.
Right.
In the winter, we do not supplement with any grain ever, from birth to plate. So there's some key questions when you're talking to a farmer, certain things that exposed when people were making some compromises that they just didn't really even think was a big deal. And one of them is, what do you use to catch the animals if they get out? Well, that was kind of one of those catch questions that indicated that we've had people who basically grazed their animals, but they trained them on corn or grain if they would get out. So they had the bucket, they would ding the bucket, and the bison or their animals were trained that sound meant, okay, there's going to be a treat. And then that's how they would catch them. Well, that eliminated them from our program, and a few of these people were just shocked that little bit would eliminate them. That's the standard we operate on. No grain ever. You have to figure out another way to catch them, and it's not with food other than, grass or hay. And so it's just, again, being educated, being aware, and grass-fed. If grass-fed is important to you, which it is extremely important to us because it's the way nature intended for ruminant animals to grow and to be fed. So yeah, those animals should strictly be raised exclusively on grass to be as healthy and nutrient dense, naturally, as possible.
Pure.
Yes.
And that's why I adore you so much and your company, because normally I want to talk to the farmer. All the farmers that I purchase food from have become family, like Christmas cards and everything. And because I want to know all those details. Do you hold your hand out and feed any grain? Were the animals born on your farm, or did you get them from somewhere else, and what did they have before there? So the fact that this is a actual company that you can go online or you can call them and order and know all of these questions, the soil, the surrounding area, all of that it's a miracle, and I don't think there's any other place.
There are a few, and however, it really, as a consumer, what I would like to just really encourage, and what we actually had to do to have the confidence and be just completely certain that we were not compromising at all with our standards, is to learn what kind of questions to ask.
You've been talking a lot about regenerative meat, so I always try to pass that on. This is beyond organic, this is beyond grass-fed, this is regenerative meat. And I don't really always know what I'm saying, but I just repeat what you have in there because it's so amazing.
Yeah.
But I do know too, I remember reading that you're changing your grass to native grasses, and I was thinking maybe that include, that's part of the regenerative meat
Mm-hmm.
cycle, or maybe those are two separate things?
No, they can be, and they don't always have to be.
Okay.
The regenerative process is literally learning about what it takes to enrich and continue to improve the vitality of the soil and the nutrient quality of the forbs and the forage. And that is understanding the inherent combination or complement of grazing animals on grasslands. You have to have grazing animals in order to increase the vitality and enrich and improve the soil for all of the elements, this carbon sequestration, the depth and the health of the roots and the nutrients and the natural fertilizer from the dung and urine of the animals. There isn't anything that continues to recycle all those nutrients and chemicals, natural chemicals, that are from the breakdown of the dung and urine from the animals. That's what the soil really needs. And will reverse desertification. Literally will reverse and minimize runoff and erosion. And of course, it creates just as a result of this healthy root system. Those are the aspects that all contribute towards that revitalizing. You want to improve from what you started with. It's slow food, it's a process, but you have to have an objective and start learning from people that are doing it. And there's plenty of support out there right now for it. So it can be done in a small little 1 acre piece of property. How you garden. You can literally have a regenerative garden, a no-till garden. That's what it would be, involving no-till.
Wow. Oh my
So
gosh.
that brings another thought to mind. When we purchased this place, the road that is right in front here had a culvert that was, I believe, 6 feet in diameter underneath it to handle the spring runoff that would occur. This is a watershed for the Red Cedar River. And when the snow would melt, it came running through this little dry creek, but in the springtime it was rushing.
Yeah.
And it had to be about 6 feet in diameter to handle the amount of water that would run through this farm. Mm-hmm. When they redid the freeway and put in the off ramps and restructured the road and put in a new culvert, based on the amount of water that they were measuring at that time that was running off through our pastures that were now great, full of grass,
Yeah.
they put in a culvert that is 18 inches. That's how little water runs off of our land in the spring now, because we capture it all and retain it all. It's not rushing into a river and running down into the stream that is now going into a river that goes into the St. Croix, that goes into the Mississippi and floods all the farms down the way. There is no tile here. We retain moisture. We retain the water that falls and the snow that melts and have a very little runoff. Those are some of the very significant impacts that we regenerative farmers have on the overall impact of the rest of our country. The midsection of our country and the floodplains of the Mississippi are impacted by what we do up here. In our own small little way, we have quite a significant impact. And so if there were a lot more of us, we would be able to reduce the amount of negative flooding that's happening and the runoff of the topsoil and the amount of nutrients that are being washed off of our farms up here and run down the Mississippi and land in the Gulf of Mexico.
Wow.
So if you look at it,
but
you don't think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And that's the other thing that's coming to my mind is one thing that gets me nervous is when I hear a lot of political, I don't even know if it's political, but maybe misunderstanding of animal-based diet And I always in my mind go, it's industrial animal is completely different than regenerative farming. And so what do you think about that? I mean, you've proven that this is helping restore and rejuvenate and actually prevent things. But doesn't it seem like a lot of people believe the opposite of animal diet? I don't.
Right. Yeah, they're not created equal.
Right.
The regenerative model has a very natural life cycle. And when you intervene with an unnatural, unintended method or alter the diet for economic reasons, it has all kinds of negative consequences that are like a domino. And it impacts so many aspects, which I just explained. What happens when you raise crops, monocrops that have a lot of bare soil. It doesn't have anything to stop the topsoil from being washed down when you have a rainstorm. Like we had about 1.5 inches of rain last night in 10 minutes. Well, that does a big number on moving topsoil and washing topsoil away if you don't have it stuck and staked in place by roots. So yes, and when you choose to feed animals a diet that is supported by monocrops, it just naturally reinforces that unnatural life cycle. I think it's rather obvious when you start to think about that.
Yeah.
So this is what we choose to do. We try to be responsible with what we've been given the privilege to manage. That's the beautiful thing. And that's what we encourage people to do. And to do to make the decisions about what your model, your life, career or profession, and what your involvement with what you would happen to choose to do with the land or be involved in the production of the food chain. Learning what the natural life cycle and the intelligence of plants and be synergistic and contribute to it instead of always fighting it. Then it's very rewarding, very rewarding.
Yes.
And like this great relationship is so rewarding to spread the message far and beyond. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Such a blessing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
you're
all
welcome.
your time.
This has been such a privilege.
Here.
You're so welcome.
The pilgrimage to the Holy Land here. It is
so. It is blessed.
Holy, yes.
It is definitely blessed.